Hello everyone, a very good morning and it's a very pleasant day. I hope you're all fit and healthy. I'm Ms. Aisha Siddiqui and welcome to the channel of Arham College where we'll be doing the SYBA English language and we will be moving forward in the third semester and the topic's name is London. I mean the poem itself is London and the author is William Blake. So we'll move ahead. First, I would like to read about the author from the book. So I am referring to this book, and let's read about the author on page number 63. So if you all have these books, you all can refer to it. Then William Blake, who lived from 1757 to 1827, was an English poet. He was a painter and an engraver at the beginning of Romantic era. So if you all know what is the Romantic era, it is when the Queen Elizabeth's time was there in London, and there were a couple of romantic poets coming up and poems also coming up with it. So he had no formal education but had read Shakespeare and Milton. So if you see, he did not go to school, and there are many successful people who did not attend school, but they greatly attained success. So I think it is, of course, we need education, but with it, we need self learning. If you self learn yourself, you self educate yourself, I don't think you need anything else. Right. And at the time of this virus, where you have so much of time at home and schools and colleges are closed, this is the time where you need to put in your self study skills. Now, largely self educated. As I said, he was self educated. His talent was recognized early and a very young age, that means, and he was appreciated. So, at a very young age, he brought up many poems and people appreciated him as well. Then his poetry was published in an unusual manner. Now, normally, how poetries are published when you're a great poets and you have a publisher and all of that, right? He personally manufactured every copy. So he did not sell it to any manufacturing unit and then he did all the advertisements and marketing and sales for his book, but he directly himself manufactured it. So the verses were cut into copper plates with engraving that illustrated them. So that means the statement says that his poetry had a blast. Everyone loved it at that time. Then he did it himself. So he actually decorated each and every page of his poetry, and so much he did. And everyone does for their work, right? If you do your work and if you give your work your 100% or your studies your 100%, I'm sure that God will gift you with more and more success. Then the purpose of his art was primarily he that rationalism and materialism of his times. That time there was a lot of rationalism and materialism going on. Then the human beings were depicted were beset with evil. So too much of money and materialistic thing nowadays also it has not gone less. It has increased and increased by time. But yet he strove for emotional and not materialistic things. Blake is William Blake, glorified imagination and intuition over reason. So, of course, now is the time of reasoning. Everyone, if you talk to someone, you will not, they will say that, do you have any point in talking? Or they will say that, is there any reason to what you're saying, right? Be logical. Do not be so emotional. I think you need to be more logical. You'll find all these words and you'll hear all these words around, but even in that time when there was a lot of materialism going on, he gave more importance to, imagination, creativity more than the materialistic things, which he equated with a tyrannical system of denials and prohibitions. So he got a lot of prohibitions that this will not work out. There are people, right? You want to go in a very unique direction. So there will be people who will like to pull your leg and say that it will not going to work out and maybe it's not the right thing. Maybe you're going in the wrong direction. You need to study this. You need to do that. But you should not listen to such people. You should do what your heart says. And if you think that it is the right thing for your future, it is the right thing you need to do, you should go ahead. You should go ahead with it. All right. Now, Blake's muse. mystical tone and symbols had become revolutionary. So all his work, as lot of hard work was put into it, it became revolutionary. Then it was not until the mid 19th century that his social and political philosophy was appreciated. So in a very short period of time, everyone appreciated his work. Of course, as I said, hard work pays. Then later on, Blake's story was marked departure from the early neoclassical poetry in theme, tone, and style. So his poetries were named as theoclassical. He first published the poetry was poetical sketches, so you can write it down or you can keep it or underline it in the book itself and consider it was his best lyrical work. So most familiar of his lyrics appeared in these two major collections that he did, that is Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. So a lot of his work was appreciated at this time. Now, let's say something about the poem as well. This poem is a part of the collection Songs of Experience. So, as I said, there were two collections that was very famous. One was Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience. But this poetry that we're going to do, that is London, it is from the collection of Songs of Experience. So, everything about his experience was counted here. Now, which presents a picture of corruption, bondage, and misery. So, because of his experience that he learned, he saw there was a lot of corruption and there was misery around, right? In a severe and harsh tone, Blake says, I mean, he centuries the authorities of the church and the state who pay no heed to the suffering of the poor. If you see, he has very challengingly said it and in a very harsh way, that means directly. He did not say it in a very polite or indirect way, or in an indirect way, but this poem is very direct and he said it in a very direct way. To whom is he referring? To the church and the state. Because these are the two people who need to take care of the poor people, right? They are actually, it's their work. So he has very harshly said few words to them. The poem was published during the turmoil of the French Revolution. Then there was much political and social unrest in the city of London. So a lot of political problems were going on at that time. Then the government had responded by introducing many political restrictions and by mobilizing foreign mercenaries. Okay, mercenaries. All right. So what happened is at this time the government was like there was so much of restrictions from the government and they did not allow many things to do. The poet persona wanders through the streets of London. So he's walking through the streets of London and he records his impressions and the scenes that he's seeing on the road, what is happening to the poor people, what are their conditions right now. Also, if you see in India, there are a lot of poor people who stay on the street and the kids they do not get education, leave the education, not even proper food to eat and clothing. So still the condition is going on. Not only it was in his time, but it is still going on. Then then his impressions and all the scenes around him he's put down into the poetry. It is a picture of the 18th century London dominated by conventional law and reason. The repetition of the word chartered is suggestive of socio-political oppression. This repressiveness results in the fear, helplessness, and the weariness that the poet notes in every face. The poet condemns the victims too for their mind forged manacles. He's saying to the politicians that you all are playing your own games, but the actual people who are suffering is the poor people. So you all are playing all your games and earning money, right? But what affects the laws and rules are affected to the poor people more rather than the ones rich, right? So even if you see right now, if you see in India, the prices are rising so high. But the government has made that rule, right? And maybe for some or the other reason that the government wants. So we cannot oppose it. But the thing is, the poor people are affecting the day-to-day life of the poor people who travel for their work every day. What will they do? How will they get so much money for the fuel to put in their bikes, right? If their salary is not that much. So there are so many things that goes on due to because of the political problems, and the ones who suffer are the poor people. Then the poet condemns the victims too for their mind forged things. So all the power, the people in the power, he's addressing them. Then the speaker specifically refers to the church and the crown, that is the palace, as for the forces of oppression. So he's actually blaming them. Whom we blame? When there's something going on wrong in the country, we are blaming the government, right? Or we are blaming the people who are in authority to take care of them. So it's natural that the poet is also blaming them. Both treat human lives as cheap things. They are all treating human life as very cheap things, right? It's not a cheap thing that there are poor people who are dying because of hunger. Then note how the stack rhyme by the use of imbibed teratometer mimics both the sound of steps as well as the drums of war. Now, everything is put on very nicely in the poetry. So we'll just once read the poetry. I'll share my screen here so that even you all can see the poetry. All right. So if you see here, I wander through each chartered street. Chartered means, if you see the word meaning of chartered, it is well defined. The word given to it is city is organized very nicely, and rights and privileges are so nice. It is also that the importance of political power and money. So if you see a chartered street, that means well, very good street. I wander through the chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow. Thames, that means a river. You can say yes, that flows over there. And mark in every face I meet. So he looks at every face that is he's walking and he's coming through. Marks of weakness, marks of ooh. That means wherever he's seen, the streets are wonderful, the streets are good. And the scene is also very nice, there's a river flowing and all. But if you see, look at a person's face, there is marks of weakness because of the poverty, because of hunger, and so many other reasons you'll find marks of weakness. And every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind forged manacles I hear. What do you mean by that? He said that in every cry of every man, any man who comes to him, right? The beggars come and they ask for money. So with his every cry, he can feel, and the child, the small people, they actually, you know, they're crying. They don't have food. They're dying because of hunger. In every voice and every band. So in every voice that he can hear, people are talking, people are crying out, people are asking for things, and then the mind forged manacles I hear. What do you mean by manacles? If you see in the glossary, you will find manacles are handcuffs or shackles that are tied. So everywhere he sees, he can see that means of course in reality people have not worn handcuffs, but he's imagining it that they have worn handcuffs because they're tied by the government, they're tied by the rules and regulations, the strictness of the rules and regulations, so many restrictions going on. So he can see handcuffs in people's hand. Then how the chimney sweepers cry, the sweepers and the beggars or the people who do all the small work, every blankening church apples. What do you mean by that? Apples, sorry, is horrifies. So he's saying that every blackening church, he can see any church and who's not taking any any stand against all this. They're all horrifying for him. It's a horrifying sight for him. and the hapless soldiers sigh because no, everyone is helpless, right? Then runs in blood down palace walls. So you can actually see that who has done all this? The government, the palace, the authority, and all the people who are dying, who the palace even can't see, but he can see that the blood is running through their palace because they are the ones in authority. But most through midnight streets I hear. So whenever you go to like when you walk at midnight on the streets, how the youthful harlots curse. What is an harlot? Harlot is a prostitute, or the woman who is a prostitute. So he's saying how the youthful harlot, that means young girl, a very young and innocent girl, but she has, because she does not have any money or she has a lot of issues, so she's gone into this problem and therefore she's become this thing and she is suffering because of that. So he can actually, understand and see her cry and blast the newborn infant's tear. Even the newborn baby does not have anything to eat, so he's crying and crying. And blights with plagues the marriage hearse. What do you mean by blights? It is destroys. All right. Then hearse means the vehicle used to transport a dead body for burial or cremation. That means a blight with plagues the marriage hearse. So it is destroying with plague. It is how, like how the virus is affected. There are like lakhs and thousands of people dying, right? Thousands and lakhs of people all over the world they're dying because of the plague. So he's saying like plagues, everything is getting destroyed altogether, and as if as if all the transports are taking dead bodies and all the transport vehicles on the road, the local transports, the buses, the rickshaws, as we see here, they're taking dead bodies for burial or cremation, that is to burn them, right? So he can see all these things. So this is a very sad story actually, if you go to see. A very sad story. Now the question answers, the comprehension, and everything more we will be learning in the next video. I hope you all understood this, and was a very emotional story. I mean, a very emotional poetry. Of course, the times are still going on, and we are the ones who need to do something about it. So, people, please to study and make your youth useful by studying and getting educated, so that in future you all can do something for the country as well. I hope you all have understood the poetry, and do take care of yourself, take care of your family, and at these bad times, help each other. Thank you so much, everyone.